Well, thank you all very much for attending today. Many of you already know Jeff, but for those of you who do not, he is the executive director of the North Florida TPO. He's been with the TPO all of his professional career, and he's been our executive director for the last dozen years or so. As a metropolitan planning organization, we have a core group of initiatives that we are mandated to do by federal law. Jeff has always been a leader who wants to think out of the box. He is an incredibly strong supporter and facilitator of regional coordination. We are an MPO that is in 4 counties. He's also championed result-oriented investment in various initiatives that we do. For the past several years, he has been pretty focused on what we call Smart North Florida. And that is, once again, implementing a variety of elements that make it up. Over the last year or 18 months, there have been some new nuances that have been added that he is going to talk about today. And this represents really a great example of bringing the private sector and nonprofit organizations together in the transportation arena, including tech professionals, business owners, startups, and investors along the way. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jeff Sheffield, who will give you an update on Smart North Florida.
Thanks, Marcy. I think a lot of you, or many of you, maybe not in this setting, but in other settings, are familiar with some of the presentation that I give, at least in the slide content that I'll share here in a minute. But really the goal today is actually to provide sort of updates on where we're at within those. So the presentation you'll see, you'll have kind of that context to it, but the goal today would be to kind of share more of an update with you, where it's been going, and really kind of trying to give you a sense of how we're moving with Smart North Florida. I'm going to be going back and forth between sharing because we tried earlier and there were some technology challenges. So there are a couple of things I want to demonstrate for you on the website, on the internet, that we'll work through in a little bit. I'll assume at first you can see the presentation now.
Yes.
Okay. So so as a TPO, this is something obviously a lot of you may have at least been aware of, and it's really been our ability on a regional scale to really move into this era of smart cities, a very common term across the country and the world. Defined very differently depending on the city or area you're in. But we've landed and really have been moving forward with an initiative that's really defined it in 3 ways. Really harnessing the power for us in smart technologies, a lot of infrastructure going out there, particularly for us in the transportation space, but we can share some other information for you that's going on. A lot of that technology is integrated into private industry and other opportunities with manufacturing and things of that nature as well. Coordinated data, this really seems to be by our homework over the last 2-3 years. We believe that the heart and soul behind a smart community is really the idea of an open regional data exchange, the ability to share data and be accessible for everyone, and that includes partnering agencies, private sector, entrepreneurs, and the public. And very important to us is really a regional collaboration component, bringing the partners together and really delivering. And when I say partners, it's crossing lanes. It's an instance for me in transportation, getting outside of that transportation lane and understanding some of the other things that are happening around here. And we've really been able to see some traction for that. The whole effort for us started as transportation, and so it's founded in a plan that we developed regionally under the premise of us having had significant investment in the technology space for the last 17, 18 years with closed circuit TVs on the roadways, dynamic message signs, signal controllers, and things of that nature. Some of you may have been over to our facility to see our regional command center operating. So a lot of that context made it appropriate for us to kind of move into smart cities through transportation. But I'll really cut to the chase and say we really focused again that the realization as we researched across the world, anyone that could pull off a real robust data management type system that's open and available to all is really the new currency today in the ability to grow our region. And that's how we've kind of moved forward. The other two, frankly, sweet spots in smart cities and smart communities are clearly this new era of economic development, the ability to not just pursue headquarters to move to your community, but the ability now to grow from within through entrepreneur and startup opportunities and build companies locally. And then the notion of ladders of opportunity. And this is really leveraging the challenges that exist in a lot of our low income communities and those with a lot of intellectual capital that simply don't have access and abilities to excel in our areas. Those are kind of the areas that we found new to the space as we've moved forward. So I'll kind of focus on a few things, but I really want to walk you through and update you within those three main focuses of the coordinated data component, the smart technologies, and the regional collaboration on how we move forward. So within the data space, we've always had this big ocean vision of ours that all data would house in a cloud and be accessible to all and allow us to apply data science and really define in much more complexity the challenges and solution sets that we can apply in our region. The theory behind this is obviously whether we're private sector and frankly in public sector, even departments or even divisions within a department are siloed and provide their own data storage and IT access, but only within their own space. And so could we develop a cloud-based common data model, single storage of information and accountability to that as a big picture? We are very fortunate in this case to use a process within the TPO in terms of something that all MPOs across the country are required to do, and that's development of what we call a congestion management plan. The reality of that is collecting a bunch of data every 5 years. As I say, we cook it up in a spreadsheet and used to produce a paper document. The proposition here was our ability to use that, and instead of the spreadsheet and instead of the paper document, could that be the means with which it's our first effort to store data in the cloud and then to apply analytics and performance measures from that data and make our processes more automated and digital. This is also that first area of economic development where we actually leverage the local startup. It didn't frankly exist at all before working on our project, and it was two individuals. And as a startup, they developed the common data model for us, and what they have now is a marketable value proposition. They now can sell their product across the country, and that's what they do. They went from 2 to now 12 employees. They worked their way through the UNF Entrepreneurial Center, graduated from that program, and now are off and running here in our region. The byproduct of this exercise was the North Florida Data Exchange. And I'll leave this presentation because I want to demo on the internet for you what this meant. As I mentioned, we went through a transportation exercise. I could have just produced a transportation cloud and just worked within DOT and the partners that we typically do. But under this Smart North Florida, and I'll call it SNF for short going forward, under the SNF initiative, we really felt like we had the prospects for this public utility in the smart community space. So we rolled it out instead as the North Florida Data Exchange with a lot of empty buckets other than transportation. Hopefully this is going to work. I'm going to stop share and I am going to go out and please tell me if you are still seeing the data exchange. Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So this is the live one on the internet. So essentially we only had the transportation bucket, but what we've done under SNF now is work with partnering agencies and organizations to grow and fill the other buckets. And again, public access now to open data and information. And what we've decided is building it from an organizational standpoint. So I don't want to go out there as a TPO and find aviation information and environment and all these public data sets that I could find. Because if I did that, I'm ultimately responsible on an annual basis to ensure that all of those data sets remain updated and valuable to the users. We've elected to go a little more organic. And so as we grow organizations within it, and I'll show you this first, as we grow organizations within it, they are loading their data sets that they are willing to share. And consequently, we are building more of a sustainable model under the data exchange concept because they are maintaining what, again, they are responsible for going forward. When we look at the exchange, for example, it's simply, again, the ability, in my case, you can see that the TPO currently is sharing about 19 different data sets within the exchange. We maintain these as raw CSV files, so now data scientists and other agencies can draw this in and then build their own dashboards, analytics, or whatever they want to do off of it. It continues to grow, like I say, over time, every time we develop a new project. I'm going to stop share and go back to my presentation. I really hate doing it this way, but for some reason it just was not working for us earlier. So that being said, what we have now is, in my particular case, and this is for all entities on how the exchange works, we have a cloud-based data exchange that's constantly being updated with data sets that now is normalized for everyone to be able to share from. In my particular case, as I mentioned, it created the opportunity for us to go from paper document reporting to digital performance measure analytics. Bear with me, I'm gonna have to go out again. And it has created the opportunity for us to, let's see here, to basically develop performance measures now real time. So essentially, I've taken performance measures that we updated every 5 years for a federal process are now living and breathing all the time and available to us. All of our measures from quality of travel, speed, information, utilization of the roadways, public safety, any of the above. And I'll share an example with you as we're going forward here. Quarter performance. So when you go through here, these are living performance measures. So every time a data set is updated within the exchange, my dashboard performance measures are updated real time. So at any moment, we're able to understand what conditions are and how we're meeting it. Bear with the chewing here for a minute, because this one in particular will sort of give you that example. What this is doing right now is going out there on our road network, and everywhere we have a Bluetooth sensor that's pulling real-time travel flow in our road corridors. And by that, I mean you and your phone driving by this sensor and it's getting pinged and we're able to get real-time travel information. At this moment in time on the corridors that we have, this is the aggregate anyway of what the current speed is, travel times along that network. So this is kind of gives you that sense that the real-time data is going to the exchange, and from the exchange, it's coming down to my dashboard and providing performance measure information. This process translates to your business, to your industries, whatever it is, the ability to develop your own dashboard, your own performance measures, but doing it in a way that draws from the data exchange. And that's how we start to create some of these opportunities. I'll share back to my PowerPoint. Wrong one. There we go. And so that's how we've been able to kind of lay out from the data standpoint. And what we're doing now is just growing that kind of relationship, building partnership with organizations to share into it. On the project side, the smart technology, familiar slides you'll see from whether you've seen me in other presentations, but the information I want to share behind it will just give you some updates on where we're at. So in the safety space, we've been working on projects from flood sensors to rail crossing notifications to smart lighting. A little bit of update on that. Within the rail crossings, our focus point has been the rail crossing at Baptist Hospital. And so we've completed all of our preliminary design to deploy a notification system. So we'll be able to convey back to ambulance drivers the time of arrival of that train to Baptist. And if the condition of the patient, depending on the condition of the patient, that ambulance driver could divert potentially to another hospital or service if necessary. So real-time early information for them. Eventually would be able to share that with the public. Another project for us on Bay Street, a particular component of Bay Street is called the Bay Jacks. That's where we're deploying PED sensor cameras, signal upgrades, communications integration, and flood sensors. Earlier detection of flood conditions, the ability to connect those flood sensors to parallel roadways and change the signals automatically on parallel roads. Because as we know, the water goes up, vehicles would move to the drier roadways, and can we develop all of that? That project at this point is in final design. The construction dollars are available July 1st, so within the next fiscal year, beginning July 1st, we'll see the deployment of these cameras, flood sensors, and others. This goes in concert with the automated vehicle system that JTA is doing. In the safety space as well, that I don't really have a visual for, but within our command center, if you haven't been here in a while, we now maintain 2 analysts in here that are running the Sheriff's Real-Time Crime Center. So not only are we managing the transportation system, but now a project using Motorola cameras and shot spotter gunfire detection in some of these high crime areas, analysts able to do real-time visual detection and crime analysis for these incidents, and that is now operating out of our center. We're even in the point now of leveraging some of these entrepreneurs where we're taking the data, crash data and other information. Florida Highway Patrol is in our building as well, and we're doing a predictive crash pilot project. What this is some data scientists are developing machine learning that's attempting to predict crash locations so that our FHP officers are locating geographically in the region based on the predictability of where crashes are likely to happen, so we could be more efficient with their function. 7 officers are actually taking the information from that, locating where it says, but then logging in reality, where are they going, what are they doing, and the machine learning is going and becoming smarter and smarter at predicting the crashes over time. And you can imagine the efficiencies that come from that, where we're almost responsive, as I say, rather than even responsive in terms of how we're managing incidents. Stuff that's just making life a little bit easier. We've been really advancing some various parking management projects around the region. St. Augustine is probably the most aggressive with their smart parking. If you've been down there now, an app to park. We're able to now pull with them real-time parking analytics through license plate reader systems down there, and start to understand how parking is occurring within the garages versus the lots and the meters down there. We recently were able to support a grant application to the state that's now funding the next phase of this, that will put in digital message signs throughout St. Augustine, similar to you've seen in other cities, that now are going to say how many spaces are available, where they're available, and where you can go park. And then the third phase that we're rolling out is ultimately a scenario where once the analytics show a full saturation of parking during a special event in St. Augustine, they're going to move to satellite parking in the periphery and have shuttles. The analytics will tell them that. Our dynamic message signs on the interstate that we run from the command center or through an app will be able to convey to you as drivers, simply don't enter St. Augustine, they're already in satellite parking, and you'll park on the outside to find your way in. So just trying to convey things. It's my understanding that we are shortlisted from the state to for the state to submit to Washington a federal grant request for $5 million for us to roll out what we have for a full vision of Smart St. Augustine. So parking management, pedestrian sensors, flood sensors, real-time truck delivery management program, smart lighting, the whole package, and our ability to do that. If you've been to Atlantic Beach and Neptune, they also now have a parking system that's being implemented as well. We talk about doing things, just some of the basics and being preventable. If you've ever seen my presentation, you've heard me talk about pavement management. not very sexy, but very important for transportation, and that is pavement. Really, can we develop a data-driven process to understand how to maintain, repave, fix cracks and rutting within our counties, and develop that, but can we do it cost effective? As I go out to demonstrate, we have been able to leverage, because of the S&F initiative, tech companies and startups and others from around the country know the challenges that we've put out there, and they're coming in and we're giving the ability to be a test bed for a lot of their new technologies. I'll go out and share this one. This is an example of that within the region. We just finished a project with a company called Robotics, and they're out of Pittsburgh. We have talked about this, but we finally implemented it. So that's really where the update comes in. Robotics has developed an analytics platform within a smartphone that mounts to a rear view mirror of any vehicle. So this goes on county fleet vehicles, and we're able to drive the roads real time through visual camera detection, and it rates and scales the pavement conditions of the roads. And so we're able to understand and develop now repavement programs rather than the old way of just saying, hey, it's been 10 years, it needs to be resurfaced. Any of you have been here long enough to remember the Better Jacksonville plan? Many of us remember roads getting paved and wondered why, and then wondered why others didn't. And a lot of it had to do with just sort of an equitable balance across the city instead of condition-based decisions on it. So what we have from Robotics, and we did this in Clay County as a demonstration project, is frankly our ability to get away from $1 million LiDAR systems. And what we get from this is essentially hotspot detection now of where road conditions are very poor. So within this system that rates from 1 to 5, we've been able to benchmark that against the very expensive technologies that DOT does. And what we get from the system, just as an example now, is the cameras are taking visual detection like every 10 feet. It does an assessment of the roadway. So not only do you have the rating and scale system as a county to develop your maintenance programs, you frankly don't even have to go out there. You have visual of every condition and everything that exists, and we can become more efficient across the board. It even rolls out a full analytics analysis report that takes a minute to chew, but it rates and scales every roadway. And so you can imagine the possibilities. The beauty of this is it's less than $100 a mile, which is very cost effective in the transportation world. It also creates the reality as I leave this. It also creates the reality here in this new world of analytics that once enough data is collected, the machine learning can actually predict a pothole before it even happens. So our ability to get out there even preemptive and address the condition is what we're seeing today, and see the implications of this across the board. What S&F is trying to do is leverage these new technologies, give them a playground to be a test, and we fund that. But it is not our intent to be the one who deploys it across the region. We're testing new stuff, sharing it with the localities, and then if it makes good budgetary sense, then there's the opportunity to move forward with that. What we're seeing too, just in the basics, one of the things we have, obviously JEA continues to be much more efficient in their smart metering systems. They're having earlier system detection of leaks through their infrastructure. You're seeing a lot of that smart city concepts in water and utilities. In the waste management, we have two kind of projects that are out there right now. JTA at a lot of their park and ride facilities have deployed new smart garbage cans. If you've been on St. George Street and St. Augustine recently, you'll see the new cans up and down St. George Street. It not only senses whether the can is full or not, it has compacting components to it so that it's just more efficient and helps to also better deploy public services to go out and empty those cans and really improve what can be a blight in an urban city. So we're seeing the opportunities there. But the real fun stuff for me, to be honest, is a guy in transportation for 28 years, rolling out a smart region, smart North Florida initiative in transportation. I had no idea that the notion of that data exchange, that the reality of what data and means now in the entrepreneurial world in particular, it really connected us with a sector out there that we had not ever known or been a part of. And it's built relationships with other institutions in the region because everybody sort of understands that spirit of sharing that the exchange seems to present across the region first, and then our ability to leverage it and bring the right folks together. I've always felt like from a TPO perspective in transportation, our true greatest asset has been our ability to fill a room with people and get them to talk. Um, Now it's really fallen its way into smart North Florida, and we're able now, frankly, to facilitate conversations with, frankly, any use case and fill a room and get them to talk. Um, it did create a challenge for me and us as the TPO though, because we start, as you'll see here in a minute, we start to get outside transportation. So we've had to, as of a few weeks back, we have officially stood up SNF as a 501c3 nonprofit. So by doing that, I'm able to create a bit of a line between the TPO that spends federal dollars in transportation and our ability to leverage all these other opportunities that are presenting themselves. So I'll kind of share that when we go forward. But that whole partnership piece, we continue to hang our hat on Elevate Jax's or Elevate Northeast Florida, the 5-year strategic plan from Jax USA, because we are a regional entity. It's really nice to see a regional entity in economic development continues to see becoming a smart region as one of the 4 main pillars in growing over time. I know they're kind of working on their state of the region project now, and looking to highlight kind of what I'm sharing with you today, some of these progresses that we've made, in particular in St. Augustine, as maybe a showcase of what's going on. We've also had the benefit of really understanding now, as I've been brought into sort of the meetups that the tech community in Northeast Florida have. We've really seen the opportunity to sort of be the middleman, if you will, at the TPO, as we've discovered the meetup culture and the entrepreneurial culture, and given presentations in the warehouses over beer and pizza, in the breweries, in Mosh after hours. It became very clear to us that this is really the new era of economic growth within our region. But we also realized that this is not necessarily the same group that finds their way to chambers and economic development groups. They're not as much about fans of going to the River Club over wine and cheese as they are over beer and pizza. And so we felt like we could kind of bridge that gap, having relationships in both spaces. And so for the prior to the pandemic, we were in the tech and beer world. So we've been holding tech and beer meetups that have been able to bring them sort of out of the warehouse, if you will, and into the light. And we've been able to engage them through networking processes that puts together entrepreneurs, tech investors, and others. And then we've been able to draw in sort of chamber folks and county commissioners and others who maybe have not really viewed that sector and are able to see what's happening over time. So we've done them throughout the region. We've had them as small as 75 and as high as 250 in a room, coming together. Over the last year, and we really took it from, we had this idea of really taking it from just beer and networking and really leveraging that community. And if you look at kind of the sequence of the events that we did leading up to the beginning of this year, pre-lockdown, we took the last 2 and really started to look at how we could engage in identifying as SNF what are perceived or believed to be our greatest community challenges, so that we can understand it and create an opportunity. So we did an event called Idea Fest off of one of our tech and beers with our friend Earl Benton, who hosted us at Champion Brands. And it was a crowdsourcing event for about 45 days, asking anyone to share uninhibited their thoughts and concerns and challenges that they felt in safety, mobility, climate, opportunity for all, economic development, education, and health. And so what we got was just a lot of random banter of really amazing ideas and some not so amazing and some in between. But that's exactly what it was intended to do, because our follow-up event off of a Tech and Beer was to hold a 30-day crowd polling event to rank all of those use cases and ideas that came out of the crowdsourcing event. The reason we wanted to do that was to rank within each of those sectors I mentioned, because then we were going to take it, which we have, into the hackathon world. So what we've been able to do now is take the priorities from those sectors, and we're laying out a challenge to the data science teams and entrepreneurial sector, frankly, across the country and or world if they choose to participate, and give them about 2 weeks and access to the data and information necessary, and allow them to develop apps and other solutions from it. At the end of the exercise, we award the winner. And if the product or idea is viable enough, they find their way as a startup potentially to whether it's the UNF Entrepreneurial Center or others, to have all the resources to develop their idea and potentially take to market. In the best of cases, we can connect them with a local investor that could seed early funding to them. And what we have in this scenario is that model I told you earlier with that startup locally here in Jacksonville that we were able to do. We created a challenge. They presented an initial idea and solution. We connected them with investment and funding and the ability to grow it. If it works, they now have a product that's marketable and sellable everywhere. And we as a community are the beneficiary of the output. Now, the scenario we're talking about streamlines and creates opportunities for groups that typically can't participate in my space. Public sector procurement processes are a nightmare and they're very expensive. The federal requirements for procurement are very difficult and cost prohibitive. So that's why it's large consulting firms all the time. Doing something like this costs me virtually nothing. And to be quite honest, if it goes in that cycle I just mentioned, I may have never procured them as a public sector entity, and we've just been the beneficiaries of the challenge. So that's what we're doing now, is kind of identifying different use cases and running it through what will become a regular occurrence of these types of hackathons. Again, we're connecting to those groups in ways we haven't ever done before. We don't do this through the TPO or public sector sites. We do it through weird places like DevPost and Slack channel, because that's where they are and they engage and participate in the space. So I equate it to a modern day paradigm shift for procurement process and how we move forward. So all this leads to those opportunities that I was talking about that we haven't really, I've never really envisioned. So what we see on this is particularly in that ladders of opportunity, and these are the classic examples of what are happening on a regular basis now. We're not looking for this stuff, but the spirit of SNF now and where it's at is drawing in. So we've got tremendous partnerships across the board. One thing we're doing is a mobility for the underserved plan currently right now. And it really comes from the backdrop of, first and foremost, an engagement with us from UF Health and Baptist and other nonprofit organizations, particularly addressing health and healthy food access and other opportunities in our underserved communities. It presented to us the notion that we already have the stakeholders that are very familiar with the conditions of the underserved communities, very invested in it. And so we made them really be the conduit for how we might roll out an ability and an analytics platform that could connect all of those various stakeholders and bring together the information through the data exchange, and then allow us to perform these data analysis to better address the challenges that are happening within the area. Some of you have heard this example, but why and how does this make a difference? I'll give you the Columbus, Ohio story and why we see this. So Columbus, Ohio has an infant mortality rate 4 times the national average in 3 underserved communities in the downtown area. And the typical way we would look at that is the realization No surprise, single mothers, lack of access to health care, quality food, things of that nature. In our world, it would simply be, okay, we need to make transit more efficient and effective, hopefully giving them better opportunities to get to these services and things they need, and then do a lot of hope that maybe that works. The smart city solution says, and this is what they've applied, is within the context of those challenges, yeah, transit is something that needs to be looked at and enhanced. But they went a step further and they were able to get information from Uber and Lyft and learn that those services don't enter those three neighborhoods because of risk from a crime perspective and because of payment structure, which is typically credit card based. And then third, they went to private sector, the clinics and hospitals on the periphery, and they learned that there was an average daily 30% cancellation rate of appointments. So Smart City already says, bring in more than single data set that we think will solve the issue, create a more complex understanding of the challenge that exists, and then apply a more comprehensive solution. Their solution now means they've enhanced the transit system for one. The clinics, to the best of their ability, are scheduling these mothers during the time periods in the day that are most conducive to that transit service. They're creating a public payment incentive to Uber and Lyft to enter into those communities. And then the clinics are considering private investment in shuttles because the net gain in profit by reducing the cancellation rates means more money. So Smart City says private sector makes money, but makes money contributing to a public sector solution. And then the public outcome hopefully becomes a reduction in the mortality rate. That's what Smart City tries to do, is engage and bring other kind of scenarios together. So two things that have kind of presented themselves as again, folks find their way. As SNF is now a 501c3, our first effort, we submitted a couple of weeks ago, a National Science Foundation grant to seek funding, private funding, to deploy broadband in Eastside Jacksonville. So that's an underserved community just north of the football stadium on A. Philip Randolph. If anyone's familiar, it is an underserved community that frankly on every metric is challenged to a degree that's unmatched from any other communities, frankly, in Northeast Florida. The unique partnership there is SNF, JEA, the City of Jacksonville, Lift Jacks, which is a corporate leadership group to eliminate generational poverty, Miller Electric as a private entity to assist with the broadband deployment and development of a broadband separate LTE network, and then Duval County Schools. Our real sweet spot in that space is the ability for us, we are already through the school system, they are able to pull analytics now on every student and understand their login patterns on laptops. And they're able to see which kids have no login history outside of the school environment, to be an indicator that these kids don't have quality internet access, which means they're not participating because they're unable to in their virtual classes. They can't do their homework because they don't have quality access to the internet. So we have the ability through those metrics to know and identify the kids within that community. And we're going to be able to proof of concept to see whether we're improving their connectivity and eliminating that digital divide that's there. Another example of our ladder of opportunity, as you engage with unique partners, TPO and United Way really on paper, there wasn't reasons for us to play together. But again, filling a room and talking, we are in the process now of working to bring two of their dispatchers. If you're familiar with United Way nationally, they have the 211 call. So if anyone from the public needs help with rent, transportation, healthcare, anything, they dial 211 and United Way will provide them connectivity to the nonprofit that provides it. Challenge in Jacksonville is the dispatch center sits in the DuPont Center, and so their hours are only like from 8 to 5 or 8 to 6. And then the dispatch center closes all night long while calls are coming in. So what we've seen is the ability to leverage our command center, that we've already expanded to include the real-time crime center for the sheriff. And we're working on a project now that would bring 2 of their dispatchers into the command center. And now they have 24-hour support through the facility to be able to offer the 211 system. So this kind of speaks to how these interesting connections are happening under SNF that are allowing us to leverage and really affect the community in ways that I personally never imagined that I would be in a position to do as a transportation planning professional. So I'll leave with this though. You've got those opportunities. We've got the strong economic growth opportunity of building this new ecosystem I mentioned, the ability to connect with those creators and entrepreneurs, the ability under a public sector initiative in Smart North Florida to place those challenges out there and challenge the creators to find new out-of-the-box ways to address our issues, whether that's homelessness, access to healthcare, better transportation, any of the above. And then connect them with the right support system, whether that's the UNF Entrepreneurial Center, the center that's about to open in JTA's Regional Transportation Center, whether that's Mayo's Life Sciences Incubator that's out there, or others that are in our region, and grow from within. I'll kind of shut it down there. If you want to learn more, smartnorthflorida.com. If you care enough to want to play, reach out to me, and more the merrier. There are no boundaries to who and should participate, because one of the things that I've really preached the last 4 years, or the last couple of years, I've particularly learned in this space anymore, is never turn down a meeting based on what it looks like on paper. Because I'm telling you, it doesn't make any sense when people walk in here and they go, I don't know who you are, why I'm here. And within an hour, somehow we find this kind of universal conversation now and find creative ways to work together or connect at least together with the appropriate groups and really move things forward. So that's kind of the update, little bit of old, little bit of new, let you know where we're at. And I know it's short, but happy to take any questions. I know I could kind of see at the bottom, there was a lot of chat going